The Wild West Doctors, boring history for sleep. In the quiet hours of night, when the world slows and your breath grows steady, you're invited to wander back into the dust of the frontier. This is Mythoria, where stories are not told for urgency, but for rest, where history drifts like a soft lullaby across your thoughts. The Wild West was more than guns and gold. It was a place where survival often depended on fragile hands carrying small bags filled with hope. Doctors, midwives, and healers rode through endless silence, offering care in the harshest of lands. They stitched wounds by lamplight, poured whiskey on open cuts, and whispered calm where certainty could not be found. Tonight, their story unfolds slowly, like footsteps on a quiet trail. It is not a tale of glory, but of care, whispered in the language of dust and endurance. Now, let us begin. The Wild West Doctors. The Wild West Doctors, the dust and the doctor's bag. In the silence of the frontier night, you imagine a lone doctor traveling dusty roads. His bag carries not just tools, but the fragile hope of scattered towns. You begin to wonder how healing survives in places so raw. The night in the Wild West is never truly silent, yet it always feels vast and empty. You picture yourself standing on the edge of a quiet town, the kind of place where lanterns glow softly in wooden windows, and the wind carries the dry scent of dust and sagebrush. Somewhere in that wide silence, a single figure rides slowly on horseback. It is the town's doctor, his small leather bag hanging at his side, swaying gently with the rhythm of the animal's steps. Inside that bag lies more than instruments. There lies the fragile hope of scattered families who wait in fear and in faith. You see him pause at a crossroads where the trails fork into different lives. To the east, a woman struggles through childbirth. To the west, a ranch hand suffers from a wound that may fester before dawn. The doctor does not hurry. He cannot. Every choice is heavy, yet every choice must be made with calm, for panic serves no one here. The dust clings to his boots and his coat, but he carries on because his work is not about comfort. It is about survival. Imagine opening that doctor's bag. You would not find rows of gleaming tools, not the kind you see in modern hospitals. Instead, you would see a few worn instruments, a bone saw with its edge dulled by years of use, a handful of crude scalpels, some rolled bandages, and a bottle of carbolic acid if fortune is kind. Sometimes there is only whiskey, used for numbing pain, for cleaning wounds, for steadying trembling hands. Each item feels humble, but in this raw land, they mean the difference between life and death. The doctor himself is not untouched by the roughness of the frontier. He's weary from travel, his back bent slightly from hours in the saddle, his eyes lined with the stories of countless nights spent in barns, in shacks, in tents pitched against the wind. Yet there is a resilience in him, the same resilience that shapes the land and its people. He knows the faces of loss, but he also knows the quiet joy of saving one fragile life in a place where the odds often point toward death. As you picture him moving through the night, you sense the loneliness of his work. There are no colleagues here, no bustling wards of nurses, no laboratories to consult. He is alone with his knowledge, his bag, and the trust that desperate families place upon him. Each knock on a cabin door is met with pleading eyes, and he must become not only a healer, but also a source of calm. Sometimes his words soothe more than his tools. Sometimes a gentle reassurance holds as much weight as the stitching of a wound. Think of the courage it must take to walk into rooms filled with fever, with blood, with uncertainty, knowing that success is never guaranteed. He cannot promise recovery, and yet he arrives anyway, again and again. The horse knows the trails by memory, carrying him from one desperate call to the next. And in that endless cycle, a strange kind of rhythm is born. Dust, bag, patient, dust again. It is the rhythm of care in a land that offers no guarantees, and so you imagine yourself drifting deeper into this story, following his quiet presence as he moves from cabin to cabin. You see the gratitude in tired faces, the whispered thanks, the silent prayers. Even when his remedies fail, even when life slips away, his effort becomes part of the memory of those left behind. In the frontier, where lawmen, farmers, and wanderers write their stories in struggle, the doctor's story is written in every scar that healed and in every tear he could not prevent. You rest with this image: a man, a bag, a horse, and the dust. So simple, so fragile, yet holding an entire world of hope. And as the night deepens, you wonder gently to yourself, what kind of strength does it take to carry not only medicine, but also the weight of so many unspoken prayers? Whiskey, herbs, and bones medicine. Here is part science, part guesswork. You see bottles of whiskey used as disinfectant, herbs mixed with prayers, and bones set with rough hands. Your mind drifts to the thin line between relief and harm. In the Wild West, medicine is not a polished science, but a fragile dance between what is known and what is guessed. You picture the doctor opening his small weathered bag again, and what lies inside is not enough. So he reaches for whatever the land, the town, or the moment can offer. A bottle of whiskey rests on the table, its amber liquid glinting in the lamplight. It is not poured into glasses for cheer, but instead into wounds, hissing softly as it meets torn flesh. It numbs the pain just enough. It slows the trembling just a little. In that moment, whiskey becomes both medicine and prayer. But whiskey is not alone. Beside it are jars of dried leaves, roots, and powders gathered by hands that believe in the quiet wisdom of the earth. Herbs like willow bark, known to ease pain, or peppermint, thought to calm the stomach. Sometimes a poultice of comfrey is pressed against a bruise, or lavender boiled into tea to soothe a restless fever. The line between healer and herbalist is faint, because both reach for the same fragile hope, that nature might offer a cure where science cannot. You imagine the air heavy with the mingling scents of smoke, earth, and bitter herbs. The treatments are simple, and yet they carry risk. Whiskey burns, herbs can fail, and a wound left to chance may fester in the heat of summer. Broken bones are set with rough hands, tied tightly with splints made from wood and cloth. The work is painful, the outcome uncertain. Still, in a land where there are no hospitals, no polished halls of learning, these methods are threads in a fragile net that keeps life from slipping too quickly away. You picture a child crying with fever, sweat shining on his brow. The mother fans him desperately, while the doctor mixes a bitter brew of herbs. She gives it to the child, sip by sip, whispering comfort as the boy winces at the taste. Will it cure him? Perhaps, perhaps not. But in the dim glow of that cabin, even the act of trying carries its own kind of healing. And then, imagine a ranch hand with a broken arm. The doctor steadies him, presses the bones into place with firm, unshaking hands. The man screams, bites down on a rag soaked in whiskey, tears cutting lines through the dust on his face. The bone is bound, the pain lingers, and time will decide whether healing or crookedness will follow. It is brutal, but it is the only way. In these moments, medicine feels less like science and more like survival. The rhythm of this work is slow, deliberate, and raw. A spoonful of herbs, a sip of whiskey, a bone pushed back into place, and always the waiting to see if the fever breaks, waiting to see if the wound closes, waiting to see if life bends toward survival. The silence of waiting becomes part of the treatment itself. You feel it as you listen, the steady hush of time stretching long in candlelit rooms. Sometimes the doctor cannot come, and families use what little they know. Mothers hand down remedies from their mothers. Neighbors share secrets of roots boiled in water, of poultices pressed against burns, of prayers whispered with trembling hands. Each attempt is an act of courage, a reminder that even without certainty, people will still reach toward healing. It is not perfect, but it is human. And so you find yourself reflecting, medicine in the frontier is not the tidy science we know today. It is a patchwork quilt, stitched from scraps of knowledge, from bottles of whiskey, from bundles of herbs, from bones set straight with wood and cloth. It is rough. It is uncertain, but it is carried out with the same tender intention that fuels medicine anywhere. The desire to ease suffering, even just a little. As you let your eyes grow heavy, you hear the faint echo of those long-ago nights. The clink of a bottle, the rustle of herbs, the sharp cry of pain, followed by the hush of relief. And you wonder softly to yourself, how much of healing is the medicine itself, and how much is the hope that comes with it? The traveling surgeons. Some healers are self-taught, others trained in crowded Eastern schools. They cut, stitched, and hoped their work would last, while infection lingered like a shadow. You pause, imagining the courage it took to place your body in their hands. The frontier is wide, and scattered across that vastness are doctors of many kinds. Some are fully trained, carrying the weight of Eastern medical schools in their memory. Others are self-taught, learning through trial, error, and necessity. They become traveling surgeons, moving from town to town, never staying too long, yet leaving their mark on the lives they touch. You picture them climbing down from worn stagecoaches or stepping off tired horses with their small bags and weary eyes. They are both strangers and saviors, welcomed with gratitude and suspicion in equal measure. Their work is rough, but it must be done. Surgeries here are not conducted in sterile theaters, but in barns, kitchens, and bunkhouses. A wooden table becomes an operating bench. A lantern swinging overhead becomes the only light. The surgeon rolls up his sleeves, washes his hands as best he can in a basin of cold water, and begins. Around him, the air carries the heavy smell of sweat, of iron, of whiskey, poured both for the wound and for the patient's courage. Imagine the sound of a saw meeting bone. It is sharp, jarring, unforgettable. For a ranch hand whose leg has been crushed beneath a wagon, amputation is the only chance of survival. The surgeon works quickly, knowing infection waits in every shadow. There is no anesthesia, only whiskey or a bite of leather. The patient screams, then grows faint, then drifts into silence. The surgeon ties the last stitch with trembling hands, knowing that now it is a matter of waiting. Life and death hang in the balance, swaying like the lantern above him. Not every story is one of loss. Some are of quiet victories. A bullet lodged near a rib is removed with steady hands and luck. A deep cut from barbed wire is cleaned, stitched, and healed without fever. A child with appendicitis, though no one calls it that yet, survives because the surgeon dared to cut, dared to try. Each success feels miraculous, a fragile flame in the wind. The surgeon rides away, leaving behind families who will speak of him for years. These traveling surgeons are not only men. Sometimes women, trained as nurses or midwives, become surgeons by necessity. With hands steady from years of tending births, they turn their skills to emergency care. In towns too poor to hire a doctor, they become the surgeons of last resort. You picture them tying on aprons, sharpening knives, and whispering prayers under their breath as they work. They, too, leave behind stories of bravery, of improvisation, of compassion stitched into every wound they close. Yet for every tale of healing, there are darker ones. Infections spread quickly. Without antibiotics, even a small cut can turn fatal. The surgeon's knife may save, or it may doom. Families watch with eyes wide in fear, knowing the healer's hands are not infallible. Hope is fragile, but it is all they have. And so, again and again, They place their trust in these traveling surgeons, because to do nothing is far worse. You think of the roads they travel, dusty trails stretching endless between towns, nights spent sleeping in barns or under stars, meals eaten quickly, saddlebags always ready for the next call. Their lives are as unsettled as the land itself, yet they continue. For them, the frontier is not only a place of hardship, but also of duty. Every town, every cabin, every stranger becomes their patient, their responsibility. And in the quiet of the night, after a long day's ride, a surgeon might sit alone by a campfire. His hands ache, his tools still stained. He stares into the flames, replaying the faces of those he tried to save. Some survived, some did not. The fire crackles, the stars turn slowly overhead, and still he knows. Tomorrow there will be another knock, another wound, another chance to try. The burden is heavy, yet it is carried. So as you close your eyes and let the story soften, you reflect on these traveling surgeons. They are not perfect. Their work is crude, their tools are few, and their knowledge is limited. Yet in the emptiness of the frontier, they are light in the darkness. And you find yourself wondering gently, how much courage must it take to walk into a room of pain with only your hands, your knife, and your faith that trying is better than nothing? Women with healing hands. Not all doctors wore coats or carried diplomas. Midwives, herbalists, and mothers carried ancient wisdom, tending childbirth and fevers with quiet care. You notice how their role shaped survival more than history often admits. On the frontier, not every healer carries a title, nor does every healer carry a doctor's bag. More often than not, the most steady hands belong to women, wives, mothers, midwives, and herbalists, who step forward when sickness or birth calls. Their names rarely appear in history books, yet their work lingers in every child who survived the night, in every fever cooled, in every life carried gently into the world. You picture a woman kneeling beside a straw bed, a lamp flickering at her side, her hands moving with quiet certainty. No applause, no recognition, only the soft weight of duty carried in silence. Childbirth on the frontier is both ordinary and perilous. Every home becomes a birthing room, every neighbor a potential witness. A midwife is summoned in the dark hours, her steps quick across dirt roads, her bag filled with herbs, cloth, and knowledge passed down through generations. She speaks in whispers, steady and calm as the mother grips the edge of a blanket, riding waves of pain that feel endless. Sometimes the cries of a newborn pierce the night, sharp and triumphant. Other times, silence follows, and the midwife bows her head, sharing grief in the only way she knows, by holding the mother's hand until dawn. Herbal wisdom often lives in the memory of these women. They gather roots and leaves not as superstition, but as inheritance. A tea brewed from raspberry leaf to steady a pregnancy, chamomile to soothe a restless child, a poultice of plantain pressed to a wound. The land itself becomes a kind of pharmacy, if only one knows where to look, and these women do. Their knowledge is not written in books, but carried in stories, whispered across kitchens, handed down like a thread binding mothers and daughters through time. Beyond childbirth, beyond herbs, there is the simple act of care. A cool cloth laid across a fevered forehead, soup cooked slowly and spooned into trembling lips, prayers murmured when all else has failed. These gestures seem small, but in a place where survival is uncertain, they are lifelines. The doctor might ride away, the surgeon might pass through, but the women remain. They are the steady presence, the familiar voice, the comfort that does not leave when the lantern burns low. Imagine a child struck with scarlet fever. The doctor has done what he can, and now it is only waiting. The mother sits at the bedside, wiping sweat from her child's face, humming songs to soothe the restless body. Night after night she does not sleep. her own strength poured into the act of keeping watch. When the fever breaks, she collapses in relief, her work unseen but essential. This is the hidden medicine of the West, the medicine of endurance, of love, of hands that never give up. Some women become healers not by choice, but by necessity. When towns are too far from doctors, when money is too scarce to summon one, it is the women who learn to stitch wounds, to set bones, to comfort the dying. They carry grief in quiet ways, never speaking of the nights when their efforts were not enough. And yet they continue because the need never fades. They become the backbone of survival, the unrecorded physicians of families and towns. Others choose the path with purpose. Some travel from house to house as midwives, their names whispered with reverence in every cabin they visit. Some study nursing in the East, then bring their knowledge back to rough towns where no other care exists. Some, widowed or alone, devote themselves fully to tending the sick, their homes becoming small sanctuaries of healing. Each story is different, yet woven together by the same thread. Compassion expressed through hands that give more than they take. As you drift deeper into this reflection, you notice how much of history forgets these women. The records speak of wars, of railroads, of cattle drives, of lawmen and outlaws. But between those grand events lies the quiet labor of survival, often carried by women whose names we do not know. They may not have held diplomas, but they held lives in their care, and often that mattered more. So, as you rest now, you carry with you the image of these women with healing hands. Their work is not grand, not loud, but steady. It is the whispered voice in a dark cabin, the cool touch against a fevered brow, the first hands to hold a newborn, the last hands to comfort the dying. And you wonder softly, how many lives have been saved not by medicine alone, but by the simple, unwavering presence of a woman who refused to turn away. Snake oil and the salesman. The frontier also welcomed tricksters. Traveling wagons promised miracle tonics, painted with golden words, leaving towns both hopeful and deceived. You reflect on how easily desperation turns into belief. The Wild West is not only a land of dust and struggle, it is also a land of promises, some honest, many false. You picture a wooden wagon rolling into town, its wheels creaking, its paint chipped but still bold. Bright posters flap in the wind, painted with golden letters that shout of miracles. The townspeople gather, drawn by curiosity and hope. On the wagon's stage, a man in a fine coat raises his arms and declares that he carries the cure to every ailment, pain, fever, weakness, even the fears of the heart. His voice is smooth, his words rehearsed, and for a moment, even you almost believe. These men are called patent medicine salesmen, though most people simply call them snake oil sellers. Their bottles glisten in the sun, filled with colorful liquids that catch the eye. Some contain herbs, some alcohol, some opium, and some nothing at all but water and sugar. The labels promise wonders, restores youth, cures melancholy, relieves all pain. Each bottle is sold for more than most families can spare, yet desperation loosens purses faster than reason can stop them. Because when sickness lingers, when a child coughs through the night, or when age stiffens bones, who would not reach for hope in a bottle? The salesmen know this. They are masters of performance, turning every town square into a theater. They tell stories of miraculous recoveries, of men rising from death's door after just one sip, of women walking again after years of suffering. The crowd leans forward, their hearts already halfway convinced. A man in the back coughs loudly, and the salesman seizes the moment, offering him a free taste. The man drinks, smiles weakly, and the crowd erupts in applause. It is theater, carefully staged, and yet it works. Imagine the faces in that crowd. Farmers, miners, mothers holding children, old men leaning on canes. Each of them carries a burden, each of them longs for relief. They hand over coins one by one, clinging to the belief that maybe this time the cure is real. They take their bottles home, sip them slowly, and sometimes feel better. The alcohol warms them, the opium soothes them, the sugar comforts them. For a while, the pain lessens, and that is enough. In a way, the salesman delivers what he promised, though not in the way he claimed. But not every bottle brings comfort. Some bring harm. Addiction grows quietly in the shadows. A man drinks too much, too often, until he cannot stop. A mother gives her child spoonful after spoonful, unaware that the soothing liquid carries poison within. In cabins across the frontier, hope turns bitter, and yet the wagons keep rolling because there is always another town, always another crowd willing to believe. The story of snake oil is not just about deception, it is also about longing. The frontier is harsh, and medicine is scarce. Doctors are far away, remedies are uncertain, and suffering is constant. Into this emptiness rides the salesman, offering certainty where none exists. His bottles are not just potions, they are symbols of hope. And even when people know deep down that the promise is too perfect, still they reach for it, because reaching for hope feels better than surrendering to despair. Not all who sold these remedies were villains. Some believed in their tonics, mixing herbs and roots with genuine faith. Some cures did soothe, some teas did calm, some elixirs did restore strength. The line between fraud and faith was often blurred because knowledge itself was limited, and the frontier demanded improvisation. A remedy that worked once might fail the next time, but still it was tried, again and again. As you listen, you feel the rhythm of these scenes, the wagon's wheels, the salesman's voice, the clink of coins, the soft pop of a cork pulled free. It is a cycle repeated town after town, hope purchased in glass bottles, hope carried home in trembling hands. And though history remembers these men as tricksters, you cannot help but see the humanity in the crowd, the aching desire for relief, the willingness to believe in miracles, the quiet courage of those who tried anything to ease their suffering. Now, as you let the story settle, you picture one last scene. The wagon rolls away, leaving a cloud of dust behind. The townspeople return to their lives, clutching their bottles, whispering prayers that this time will be different. Some will feel comfort, some will feel regret, but all will remember the night when hope arrived in a wagon, dressed in golden words. And you ask yourself softly, was it the bottle that healed? Or was it the fragile belief that even in the wilderness, miracles might still be possible? The quiet echo of care. As the frontier softened into towns, medicine slowly grew steadier. Yet the memory of crude tools, whispered prayers, and stubborn survival lingers like a campfire ember. You drift off, asking yourself, what does it mean to heal when certainty is never promised? As the years pass, the Wild West slowly changes. The dusty trails become roads, the scattered cabins turn into towns, and the towns begin to grow into cities. Medicine, too, changes. Slowly, unevenly, but steadily. Hospitals rise where once there were only barns. New tools arrive, cleaner methods spread, and doctors no longer ride alone across endless miles. Yet even as the West softens and steadies, the memory of those early healers lingers like a quiet echo. You can still hear it if you listen closely. The creak of saddles, the clink of bottles, the murmur of whispered prayers in the night. That echo belongs not only to the doctors and surgeons, but to the women who nursed, the midwives who delivered, the families who cared in silence. It belongs to every hand that poured whiskey on a wound, to every voice that soothed a fevered child, to every stranger who sat by a bedside when no one else could. These acts may seem small, but they are the threads that wove survival into the fabric of the frontier. Without them, the story of the West would be a shorter one, cut off too soon by the cruelty of disease and injury. Imagine walking through a quiet graveyard on the edge of an old western town. Wooden markers tilt in the wind, their names long faded by sun and rain. Many lives ended too early, taken by illnesses we can now cure with ease. And yet, for each name carved into wood, there are countless names that were never recorded, lives that endured because someone cared, someone tried, someone stayed awake through the night with nothing more than hope and a steady hand. That, too, is part of the story. The echo of care is not loud. It does not announce itself with gunfire or gold. It whispers. It hides in the corners of memory, in stories passed from grandparents to grandchildren. You hear it in the way people still speak of resilience, of grit, of neighborly duty. The care may have been rough, the remedies uncertain, but the intention was unwavering. It was not about perfection, it was about presence. You can picture a frontier doctor, older now, sitting on the porch of a small house as the sun sets over the plains. His bag rests at his feet, worn and faded from decades of use. He no longer rides as far as he once did, but in the silence of evening, he remembers the faces of those he helped and the faces of those he could not save. There is sorrow in those memories, but also a quiet pride, a recognition that even in failure, he offered something precious, the willingness to try. And then you picture the women, the midwife, the mother, the neighbor, who never laid down their duty even when history forgot their names. They too carry memories. The children they brought into the world, the fevers they calmed, the lives they comforted in final hours. Their stories are not carved in stone, but they live on in the families that survived because of them. Their healing hands are part of the West's foundation, even if the world rarely speaks of them. So much of history tells us about battles and empires, about wealth and power. But here, in the hush of this story, you feel another kind of history, the history of care. The small, persistent acts of healing that turned wilderness into home. It is a softer story, a quieter one, but perhaps it is the story that matters most when you close your eyes at night. Now, as your thoughts grow slower, you let the echo of that care surround you. The gentle rhythm of a horse's steps on a lonely road, the soft splash of water in a basin, the muffled cry of pain met by the steady voice of reassurance. These sounds drift together, blending into a lullaby of endurance and compassion. The West may have been harsh, but within it lived a tenderness that refused to fade. And so, as you drift toward sleep, you carry this final reflection. Healing is not always about certainty, or even about success. It is about showing up again and again, with what little you have, offering presence when nothing else remains. The Wild West doctors, the women with healing hands, the snake oil sellers who promise too much, all of them remind us that in every era, care is both fragile and enduring. And you ask yourself softly, what does it mean to heal when certainty is never promised, but compassion always can be? And so, the story of the Wild West doctors drifts to a close. In the quiet dust of the frontier, healing was never certain, yet care was always offered. Doctors, midwives, and families carried hope in their hands, leaving behind an echo that still lingers softly in memory. As you rest now, let their quiet endurance remind you that even in the harshest places, compassion finds a way. The night is yours to hold gently, with calm in your breath and stillness in your mind. This has been Mythoria, sharing a story for sleep and reflection. Close your eyes, release the weight of the day, and let the silence carry you. Good night.